Say what?
Tell me about your family.
Oh, my family. Okay. Uh, my dad was an inventor. He invented an artificial arm used by the Navy during the Second World War. My mother, well, they both owned apartments in Santa Cruz. And my grandparents, my mother's parents, had the apartments first, and then my folks took over. And my dad just, he could do anything. You know, he could fix cars. So there were early television sets. He could fix them. He could fix radios, refrigerators. Um, that particular talent passed over me. What I think I did get from him was, not that you asked this question, but what I did get from him was, uh, I guess, curiosity and figuring out problems, not in a technical way with tools and machines, but human problems, and which is, I suppose, why I got into teaching, and coaching. And I was just about 8 years old, months shy, and I heard Major Bowes, which was a talent program, which later became a television program. That was radio, which became Ted Mack. Well, my dad was away painting bombs in Iowa, and I heard this tick 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 tick, on the radio, and I said, "What's that?" She said, "Tap dancing." I said, "What's that?" She said, she took me for a lesson, and after the lesson was over, I overheard my mother saying, the teacher saying to my mother, "He's a natural, Mrs. Fitch." And I went, "Ooh," here I am as a result of that. And I realized later on that my mother had wanted to be a dancer, but her father was from the old country in Germany, and he says, "No, babe, no, you will not be like those women. You don't want to be them. You be a teacher." So she got her teacher's degree and taught for 6 months and got married. So she lived through me taking the dance lessons, And I gradually went to different teachers, vaudeville tap dancers, and then a ballet jazz tap dancer in San Francisco, and also a ballet modern dancer teacher. And then I started teaching jazz and tap, and I would go to New York to demonstrate for my teachers at dancing teacher conventions. And one of the teachers said to my teacher, "Why don't you get him on Major Bowes?" Which was a talent program, only now television and Ted Mack. And so I auditioned, I got on. And if you won 3 times, you'd get to go to Madison Square Garden for the finals. Well, I won 3 times. And at the finals, I was beat out by a tap dancer who also did magic. I was like, "Whoa, I do magic too. I could have done that." But I was opposite. Pat Boone was on the program. He lost out too to a tap dancer. So that's kind of how I got started. When my dad passed away, I was going to school, college, at the same time, and I was in New York because it overlapped the school year. So I was going to school there. And while I was there, my dad passed away, and I went back home. My brother was 9 years younger, and so I was kind of playing father to him. And we had a flood from the river, and the apartments were like 4 feet of water, So we got that all cleaned up, and then I was drafted into the Army, and I started doing shows in the Army. And that's where I met my wife. And she was singing with the USO, and we would be doing shows together. And then there was a musical Paint Your Wagon, which I choreographed, and she was one of my dancers. And that's how we met, and we got married. The rest is history. 6 kids, 10 grandkids, 2 great-grandkids. Hey! Ta-da! So, I don't know if does that answer your question, kind of?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
That's funny.
What did your dad?
Asperger's, yeah.
Yeah, OCD. What did your dad think of your travels into the arts?
He liked it. He made things for me. He made magic tricks for me, props. He made me a big bass drum floor. I thought it was a great routine with a baton and a military tap dance, jumping over the baton at the end. He made me stairs that you could tap on. Uh, every weekend, Saturday, we would go to San Francisco, about a 70-mile drive. Excuse me, and he would go along, and he'd go out and look for tools and things, and I'd take my lesson. And so he was there till the end, He liked it actually,
Hmm.
you know.
It seems sort of untraditional in a sense, or was there a difference in the society at the time in terms of the acceptance of pursuit of the arts, given how popular vaudeville was?
Well, we were in a small town, so we didn't really see any vaudeville.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I don't think there was an acceptance of boys dancing. Boys dancing were, oh dear, you know. And in fact, there was one kid in town who was an incredible ballet dancer. I really envied him. And his father was a fisherman, and there was no way he was going to become a dancer, as good as he was. I was accepted because I was a tap dancer. That's different. To them, that was more physical. And then later on, I did ballet and jazz and all that, and modern. But yeah, it was fine. I had no problem with my family.
What was the catalyst for you becoming interested in magic?
Oh, I was 12 years old. My grandmother brought me a little cigar box full of little magic props. And I said, "What are these?" There's no instructions. Nobody knew. So she said, "Well, go to the library. You might find a book." So I found this great book. It was an illustrated book of magic, translated from the Will Golston, translated from the German into English. And every prop was there. And it told you what to do with them and how to do it. And it's mine. And I woodshedded it and started playing with tricks. And you get that reaction from people when you fool them. And it was like, oh, I found this whole world, because my dad was into props and tools. So the magic tricks became my tools. And it was also a way of expressing myself. The dancing did it, but the magic was really more personal, because you're right here doing a magic trick. Dancing is a little more distance. I don't know. I never thought about that before, but I think essentially that's what it was. And also with the magic, I could figure out different things for myself, different ways of doing it or handling it. In fact, figuring out new tricks. So that was my way of inventing things. Later on, I did the same thing with tap dancing. When I started to teach, I became more inventive with new steps, new techniques. And I was the first one to teach jazz in San Francisco. Not ballet jazz, but regular jazz, like I had learned in New York City. So all of those things were uplifting and gave me a lot of confidence. My first year of college was University of Santa Clara, Jesuit college. Father Schmidt had rented this building across the campus from the city for $1 a year to help kids. He had a canteen. He had a place where you could talk to somebody like a therapist and solve your problems, and they'd never get back to your folks. He had a sports program where he sent some of the kids went to the Olympics, and there was a drama program, and he did Oklahoma, and I choreographed it. And after it was over, I said, "Hey, Father Schmidt, of all the programs you've got," they had dances on Friday nights, with a band and chaperones. And I said, "Which of these programs is the most effective?" He said, "Oh, the drama program." I said, "Wait. You're sending some kids to the Olympics." He said, "No, you don't understand." He said, if a kid comes home and says, "Hey, Dad, Mom, I'm playing basketball tomorrow." Yeah, okay, fine. But if he said, "Hey, I'm singing and dancing this show," "What? You singing and dancing? I got to see that." And maybe after it was over, he'd say, I didn't know you could do that. That was pretty good." Maybe that's the nicest thing the kid ever heard from his parents. A lot of these kids were one-parent families or parents, whatever. So I began to realize that the arts, acting, singing, dancing, acting, sculpting, painting, writing, were all very important for the development of somebody, of a kid. I used to go around and talk at PTAs and try to encourage the arts in high school. And once I got a woman who said, really, Mr. Fitch, you really want our children to become actors? Really? I mean, how many actors are working at any one time? And I said, well, okay. I actually have asked the union in New York City how many actors are working. And they said, at any one time, there's only 15%. Well, later on, when I was in the theater, I was one of the 15%. I really was working, knock on wood, most of the time. The process of the arts where they get up and speak and talk. And if they do that and they get the confidence and the applause from the audience and nice things from their family, they won't have any problem when they're adults getting up and speaking. In fact, I just heard Warren Buffett. He gave a speech to a graduating class, business class at Harvard. And he said, if you want to be a successful businessman, the thing you have to do is be comfortable with your speech. He said, you'll attract business people, you'll attract good, good associations. Yeah. And I read that 99% of successful businessmen, when queried about what was the most difficult thing for them to do, that's scared of, they said public speaking. So doing magic, singing, dancing, acting, people get up there, kids get up there, they speak, they talk, they get applause. It just helps them through their life, And that's what a lot of people don't understand about the arts. You don't have to become an actor or a singer, but it's just the process of being able to express yourself and be encouraged to do that, And through my teaching, off and on, when I wasn't working, I was teaching. And when I stopped working on Broadway, my wife gave me the idea of doing these workshops for magicians, performance workshops, not magic tricks, but how to perform better, how to speak, how to move.
I've always been curious if magic is called an art. If you're a pianist, you can evaluate your level of skill by the complexity of the music you can play. If you're an artist, portraits become more realistic. If you're an actor, you're able to memorize more words. What is it that makes magic an art? How does magic fit in with the definition of an art?
Magic is an art because it provokes one's imagination. It's sort of like painting in people's heads. They may try to figure it out. They may be baffled by it. They may get angry because they're fooled. They may turn away. But it has some kind of an effect on people. They say magic is for little kids. Well, yes, for the little kid in all of us. I can't remember the phrase that Einstein used. Without magic, there is, I don't know, I can't remember. But he gave a great efficacy to magic. Magic, the deeper it fools you, the better the magician. So it's a psychological art as well. For the magician, the craft of it is the technique, the sleight of hand, but it also is speaking. It's also putting yourself into your story. I mean, the fact that you said you can memorize more lines, that your craft, you can tap more faster or whatever, play faster on the piano. Um, that's technique. You develop a technique until it becomes a craft. In the early days, when people apprenticed, they learned the techniques. And when they got really good, good enough to be a master, they had learned their craft. But were they artists? No. Art takes off where craft, art takes over where craft leaves off. Art is you personally finding yourself in your art, not just fixing something, making something, but creating a style, whether it's a style of writing, a style of painting. It's expressing yourself. I can't think of the man's name, but he was the composer for Martha Graham in the early days, in the 20s. He was the first one to use honking horns and flushing toilets for music. And he said an artist is somebody who changes his mind, meaning he thinks vertically. Plato in his Republic said, if you want the perfect society, kill the artist. Because the artist promotes freedom, equality. One of my granddaughters is working for Goldman Sachs. When she was in college, she was one day a week. She would work for them, and then she got hired. And I called her on the phone and said, Morgan, how did you get hired for that? She said, she said, I'm not in the money department. I'm in the problem-solving department. Excuse me. And I figured out something. I solved a problem that nobody else in the department could solve. I said, what? I said, how did you do that? She said, because everybody else thinks horizontally. They have rules they got to follow. You can't do this, you can do that. She said, I think outside the box. I think vertically. And I had all kinds of ideas. And they liked one of the ideas. And now I'm working permanently for them. So that's what art does. You know, your self-expression, the freedom of being able to think, the freedom to make a mistake. People say, oh, I didn't want to make a mistake. No. A mistake is really, is not a mistake. It's a discovery. You make a mistake, oh, well, if I'd done this instead of that, oh, let me try that. I solved the problem. Every time I solve a problem, I've learned something else. I'm growing because I'm not letting failure depress me or turn me away from my goal or my dream. I'm fighting for something and I make a mistake. Oh, good. How can I fix that? Oh, how can I fix that? And the more things I figure, to me, a failure is a hole in the floor. A lot of holes in the floor, a lot of mistakes. As an actor, somebody forgets their lines. I got to help them back into the script. Okay, what'll I do if that happens again? I better learn the script for everybody a little better when I'm on stage. What if I get a book that doesn't have the prop in it when I open it? What'll I do the next time? I'm going to check the prop table, make sure that prop is in there. Prop man screwed up. So every time I solve a problem, I fill up that hole. And pretty soon, after 6 months of work in a show, I pretty much had all the problems, and I've solved them all. Now I can walk on a floor without falling through the hole. That's my symbol for that, for failure, you know. No, it's discovery.
We value honesty in our society. When you watch a magic show, are you giving somebody permission to lie?
No, I'm giving them permission to dream. I'm giving them permission to use their imagination, because imagination can make magicians of us all. You know, if you think about that. And often I've had people come up and say, you know, I couldn't figure out how you did that last night, but, you know, it set me thinking about some other problems I had. I would really be a magician if I could solve those problems. And then an idea would come. So it inspired them. It opened up the mind somehow. Uh, they're being curious about how does that work, and then, like I set a problem at night before I go to bed. In the morning, I usually have an answer because the mind is still working, or it'll give me something to do that maybe will help me find that answer. So magic is based on deception, of course. I have to direct your attention to something I want you to pay attention to. People say misdirection, but it's direction. I get you to focus on something or put your mind into something that has nothing to do with how I do the trick. So I keep your mind in a certain place. That's not lying. That's deception. I've had one person get angry at me and scream at me when I fooled her. In fact, it was Madeline who we bought this house from. And I hate that. I hate that magic. I said, Madeline, it's okay. You have to understand that the better the magician, the deeper you're fooled. I practiced for a long time to grab your attention and take it someplace else off of the method. And just know that you've given me a compliment today because I really fooled you.
So, you okay, Laura? Okay. Magicians can be good technicians. What is it you teach the young guys that takes them beyond just being a good technician?
Well, I always feel that if your presentation is as good as your technique, then you're really on the way of becoming a very good magician. It's not just about doing tricks. A lot of people just do tricks. But who entertains? What's the difference? People, in a way, they want to be fooled. No, more than that, I correct myself, they want to feel. People go to the theater, they go to a movie in a dark place and they're laughing or crying right next to some stranger. They're given permission to do that. So the better the magician, maybe as a result of his performance, it'll touch your heart. Maybe it'll remind you something about your childhood, depending on how he performs and the kinds of stories he tells, how he links his magic symbolically to situations in your own life. Or you notice him when you come on. Do I want to listen to him? Do I care? Well, if he cares about me, maybe I get engrossed and enchanted by what he's saying, and I'm carried away because it's for the magic for the kids in all of us. So even though a person may think it's just for kids, if the magician is good enough, he'll take them down. It's a story. And we all love to have our parents read stories to us. And when somebody connects a story with their experience, they're very taken by it. They're very touched. And it can produce all kinds of wonderful emotions in people. You can look at a painting, and maybe it touches you. Maybe you're curious, what does that mean? Maybe it's not a realistic painting. But if it has a label under it, there's a kind of a shadow there, and there's a brightness up here. And you say, what is that? And you walk away. I don't know. But if it said underneath, man in the sun, oh, the shadow, vertical shadow, oh, must be the man. Oh, that's the sun. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like the way he did his colors. Now I'm watching it. Now I have a sense of being in that man's world because he gave me a little clue, So with the magic and if there's some meaning in it, people get carried away into their own world, Magicians don't do magic. Magic happens in the minds of the spectator. Magicians tell stories. Magicians today, is that everything's quick. Everybody wants it now. I want to do the trick. I want to fool you. They haven't taken any theater. They haven't taken any speech, any storytelling. They sometimes don't know who they are when they're doing the magic. So how do they best use themselves? They don't know.
Can you expand on they don't know who they are?
They don't know who they are.
How does that impact the magic?
The magic becomes kind of trite. It becomes a trick. I'm challenging you to figure me out. But if I have a story, oh, my daughter, no, sorry, I'm not thinking wrong, two things here. My granddaughter, 12 years old, had those virtual reality glasses. And she was like that. And I said, what is that? She said, well, and she put them on me and it was great. It was great. I said, oh my God, it's like people are really here. I said, oh, Katie, that's the definition of magic, where you see things that aren't really there. She said, oh, Papa, no, any advanced technology always seems like magic at first. Yes, Katie, 12 years old. Oh, my God. That's true. But look, with magic, you can not only see it, you might be able to feel it, and touch it. And like if I try to create a sensory experience here with my hand, I try to feel something. I feel the weight, I feel the temperature, I feel something. And then the next thing I try to do is I try to see it. I really try to create it. I don't need the glasses, all right? And then if I believe it's there, if I feel it, if I can see it, if I believe it's there, then it's there. That was just a trick. All I did was produce a coin. But I told you a story with it. And the story actually is true. So that touches anybody who's got kids or grandkids, and it makes a point.
Magic professionally seems to be dominated by men. There are very few women. Do you know why that is?
Well, you ask the same question about politics. How many women are in Congress? How many women are doctors? More nowadays. When were women allowed to vote? It's always been, since women were witches or whatever, goddesses early on, and men took over, whether it was the church or politics. I was doing a summer stock in Wichita, Kansas, and two of the kids in the show were getting married. So it was 11:30 at night in the hotel, which was 11 stories, the tallest building in Wichita at that time. There was a fundamentalist minister there, and he said, "Woman shall cleave unto man and do his bidding." And everybody in the show was going, "Oh, please." And after it was over, he had his glass of champagne, standing against a wall. Nobody was talking to him. And I went up to him and I said, "Minister, that was very nice. Nobody's talking to you because they really have a hard time swallowing what you had to say. Now, I know you have to say it because that was your training. My feeling is, my question is, do you really believe it?" And I realized I made him a little uncomfortable. I said, "That's all right, you don't have to answer it." But let me tell you a Genesis myth by Plato. Not from the Bible, not woman out of Adam's rib, but once upon a time, the gods were on Mount Olympus. They created this creature called man. He had 2 heads, 4 arms, 4 legs. And he ran around the base of the mountain, and he created fire and wheels, and he wanted to learn, become more, and he realized the gods were on Mount Olympus, so he tried to climb the mountain because he wanted to be a god. And the gods said, "That measly creature, let's kill them. And one wise old god says, no, 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 no. All you have to do is split them in half, and each one will have one head, two arms, and two legs. And for the rest of eternity, he'll be chasing himself around the mountain trying to find completion. And I said, that's an equality myth. And this minister said, where did you find that? Where did you find? I said, Plato's Republic. I don't know whatever happened to him, but I think I made a convert that day. You know, so I don't know if that answers your question, but it seemed to follow.